Hi guys, it is the Premier League season coming up this Saturday, and I promised you a relegation video. It's our Nick Watts for We Love Betting, in something of a sequel of Premier League outright previews, in as much that Mark O'Hare and Chris Graham stole a march on me by having a little chinwag in July. Came up with some interesting stats, interesting prices, and I don't think they were too far wrong on a few of them. Looking at the relegation market, certainly the promoted clubs don't seem to make much appeal, certainly not to me. Palace 4-7, Hull 8-13, Cardiff 7-4. Don't jump off the page, especially when there's a few stats kicking around like only 4 newly promoted clubs have been relegated in the last 5 seasons, and only 5 newly promoted clubs have been bottom of the table in the last 10. Which suggests that maybe it's not guaranteed that one of these is going to do a Derby County and be absolutely appalling. I can understand the vulnerability in Palace, but just too short for me to consider backing when there's so many other clubs that could be vulnerable, in my view. Second season syndrome, the much talked about second season syndrome. Mark O'Hare had a stat to back up its existence. He said in 3 of the last 4 seasons, has seen a team relegated in QPR last year, Birmingham the year before that, and Hull the season before that one. I don't think it should be discounted, and he fancied Southampton at 10-1 just purely on a value basis, and I can see where he's going with that. I really felt Southampton were a bit overrated towards the end of last season. I do think they've got a decent side and are likely to go down, but nonetheless 10-1 is a big price. I do think there's better bets out there though. And my fancies really come in at Stoke at 10-3. They're my first one. Been quite a consistent side in many ways in the Premier League, when you look at their finishing positions at least. Always between 12th and 14th in each of the seasons they've been up in the top flight now. That's 5 in a row now. But typically low scorers in the division. They were second lowest scorers last year. Only QPR scored less goals than them. I think, just looking at my notes here, they scored 34 goals. Season before that they only scored 36 and were the lowest scorers, so they scored less goals than when they were the lowest scorers last season. And in some ways the only reason they avoided the wooden spoon in that category as such was because QPR were just that bad. My feeling is that Mark Hughes has come in, they want to change their strategy, they want to push on, they want to score more goals, they want to play more attacking football, and that's proved a bit of a minefield for clubs trying to do this sort of thing. In the past, you think of Bolton and Owen Core trying to play more expansive football there and it ending in disaster. You think of the likes of Charlton, thinking, we've had Kirbishley for a while, it's time to push on, it's time to do something new and move on, and ended up in League One within a few seasons. And there's something about Stoke that, for me, the same thing could happen again. Mark Hughes' reputation will be in tatters if he takes them down or is sacked before the end of the season if they do badly. But I have to say that he looks a bit vulnerable to me. He hasn't done enough with that squad, and I don't see it suddenly turning into a goal-scoring machine. And if they open up at the back and aren't quite as defensive, I can see them running into real problems. So 10-3 is of interest to me, definitely. Next one for me is Sunderland at 5-1. I think Di Canio is a disaster waiting to happen, I have to say. Yeah, he did a good job at Swindon. I think he's got a totally different game on his hands here with Premier League footballers with big egos. I think he's already shown signs of strain of dealing with those, with so much public criticism of his players. I think that's only just going to infuriate them, and I really can't see how you're going to motivate the likes of Sessegnon by coming out publicly and saying that his attitude's not up to scratch. I can see him having big bust-ups within that dressing room and causing real rifts. Not to mention the fact he's tried to rebuild the squad, and that comes with its own pitfalls. And I'm not convinced by him at all at this level. The other one that's particularly interesting about Sunderland is that, having finished 17th last year, I can say that the last 4 seasons, the team that finished 17th has gone on to be relegated the following season. which of course included Wigan last year. So a bit of a damning stat, and at 5-1, I think Sunderland are worth a bit of a poke, to be honest. My third one for relegation is a chorus of agreement with a certain Christopher Graham from the aforementioned preview video that these guys recorded. I think he's absolutely spot on here, to be honest. Villa are a struggling side for a massive part of last season. They're a young team. I don't think Paul Lambert's really done an awful lot to address that in the summer. Admittedly, my knowledge of the signings not the deepest, but at the same time, a side that's massively reliant on Benteke really should be concerned. 50%, I think, was the stat quoted by Mark O'Hare of goals that he was directly involved with for Aston Villa, and all it takes is an injury to him, or indeed a loss of form. The guy's only had well, in fact, half a good season at the top flight. So to be banding around the sort of 20-25 million mark for him seems a bit extreme when you think of the likes of Papis Cisse, the likes of Nika Jelavic dropping off in performance in their second season in the Premier League. So I can see Villa struggling. 8-1's a massive price. You look at their first 6 games: Arsenal away, Chelsea away, Liverpool at home, Newcastle at home, Norwich away, and Man City at home. You could see them barely picking up a point from that. If by the time they play Norwich, they've been battered and bruised from playing those bigger sides, you can see the confidence of these young players sapping out of them again and going on another really negative spiral. And with that in mind, that price is definitely going to shrink. I just can't imagine they're still going to be 8-1 with 6 games gone. We'll have to see how that one unfolds, but I think at that price you've got to get on to begin with. So just to recap then, my 3 picks for relegation, not saying that all 3 will necessarily come good, but certainly look a bit of value to me. It's Aston Villa at 8-1, Sunderland at 5-1, and Stoke at 10-3. Good luck, guys. Cheers.